It just needs something that's plug and play.
It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall. And
Shopify might be in a rough spot right now.
you can vibe code your storefront in an afternoon, and it takes all the benefits of Shopify away.
Welcome to Deep Moat, the podcast about building unfair advantages in the age of AI.
Anthropic launched Claude for Business, which is what exactly? It's like a workflow and a bunch of skills and connectors that people can use to help in their small business and take care of different areas in their business. Would you say that's pretty much it, or how would you qualify this?
Yeah, it looks like they package a bunch of skills that are targeting small businesses. So like the connections to the tools that they are most commonly using, QuickBooks, Canva, and all these things that are very, very popular with small businesses, especially in the US. And they just package it up for them. So out of the box, they can connect to everything they use, and they can be a little bit more powerful inside of Claude, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a whole new product, because it's essentially still the same app. Kind of makes it easier to connect to everything, which could be beneficial, or people will just connect apps and not use them that much. What do you think is going to be the case?
So basically you need to use this in Claude Cowork, right?
Right.
But what is it like? Is it something you can click on? Is it something you can install? Or is it just a set of guidelines that you can follow to use Claude for your business?
It looks like it's going to be more set of guidelines, to be honest, because we already have the connectors and plugins for all these tools. So I guess it's going to be more about the user experience, and they are just going to make it easier for those small, non-technical businesses to get everything set up. So maybe it's going to be just a little bit nicer onboarding with connecting to all the tools that they could have connected before. It's just going to be easier for them.
Yeah, I would hope so, because if it's just pure guidelines, that feels a bit strange, like they're testing the waters with this direction for Claude, but not being like super helpful in terms of how people and businesses can actually use it. Because business owners, especially small business owners, are busy. You have, 20 different things that they need to do every week. They don't really have time to learn, some complicated workflow. Like they just need something that's plug and play.
Right.
We've been seeing Anthropic and now OpenAI, moving to these areas now and trying to help businesses and launching a lot of new features and products. But it seems like they're not going too deep in each one so far, right? They're just testing the waters and see which one might, catch fire.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to figure out which direction to take. And if it's going to be the small businesses, if it's going to be enterprise, they also have that new implementation for legal. So they're really testing different approaches, trying to figure out. It's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and trying to see what sticks. I think that's the kind of approach they're using right now.
Yeah, it seems like it. However, if they don't have something that's obviously useful right away for people, it's probably not going to, be successful. So it might be a bit misleading. Maybe the direction is a good one. Like maybe there is demand, like a lot of demand for something like that. But, if the early users try it and, they don't get much benefit from it, it's probably not going to spread and they're not going to actually get a lot of demand for it.
Yeah, the tricky part with adaptation of AI in business is that it's different for everyone, right? Like you have different workflow. It's not one fits all like it used to be with SaaS. But the AI implementations, you really need to figure out the specific use cases that you have in your business. And you would assume that the workflows are similar for companies in the same niche, but they often are not, right? So like you have very different needs, and that's what makes your business unique. And unless you adapt it specifically for what you need, then it's not going to be that useful for them. And maybe that's the reason why all these companies are more moving towards providing services. Right? It's less about the one size fits all, and it's more about customization for every single company.
I guess we can start talking about the next topic here, which is related. So we've seen both Anthropic and OpenAI make partnerships or even new companies where they're either majority investors or minority investors and partner with investment banks and consulting firms to deploy AI and implement it in small businesses, right?
Yeah, it really seems like they struggle with convincing them, or basically the companies struggle with figuring out the best ways to implement it. Because to have it deeply implemented in your business, it's quite complex. You need a bunch of custom skills, plugins, you need to build a lot of agents, and you also need to figure out what to build first, right? So like you have all these tasks that you do inside of your business, and you have no clue which one you should tackle first. And that's where all these consulting companies come in. So it sounds like both Anthropic and OpenAI figure this out, and they listen to their customers, and now they know that they need to go in. They call it forward deployed engineers, right? That's the term these days. It's supposed to be one of the fastest growing positions in companies. And that means you take a software engineer who's specialized in AI, you put them inside of your clients, and they essentially figured out how to implement your product inside of their company.
Ultimately, this seems like a good idea, especially for them, because they want businesses to figure out how to use their AI a lot more than they are currently using it. And we've seen reports before, right? Like, a lot of companies using AI didn't actually increase productivity or even lost productivity.
I guess
So
that's
they
the
need
challenge
to.
they're trying to tackle, to be honest. They said about 96% of AI deployments sort of failed. So they need to swap that number.
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen agencies try to implement this, but I think it's very hard to scale because, as you said, each business is unique, even within one niche. So it's not easy because, you'll meet different problems. You might get stuck. So, it's not very scalable. And that's why I think they're actually going after enterprise, so probably bigger companies, not just small businesses here, because they can afford to, pay that engineer or pay the consulting and whatnot to figure out. And I guess once they figure out, for a bunch of these enterprise clients, how everything can be implemented in a more in an easier way, they can kind of templatize it and, release it to the wider public.
I think that's the hope that they are going after, that while they're inside of these big enterprises, they actually uncover very specific use cases, and then it can be generalized and pushed to Claude for small businesses, right? So they are going it from going inside companies, figuring out, and then packaging it up for everyone else, which I think is smart strategy. And it's kind of the only one that can work. Because right now, nobody really knows the best way how to use AI. Like it needs to be really close to the company and their problems, and then it can be figured out. But it doesn't scale that well. It's still service business. So not something that OpenAI would love to do long term.
I do find interesting the two different approaches that Anthropic and OpenAI took here. So Anthropic seems to be more of a minority investor. So basically it's leaving it up more to its partners, to its consulting partners and investment banks to kind of figuring out, but still helping with the technical deployment of the AI. While OpenAI is building basically a new company, they are majority stakeholder, and I think OpenAI's approach is the better one in the long term because they can control everything. They can control the vision, how it needs to happen, how it's going to be adapted to the new AI models that will appear in the future. So I think OpenAI will have like more success in this area, but I guess we'll have to see.
And they're
What do you
also
think?
closer to their model, right? So they know what's coming next. So they can help them implement it before it's officially released, or at least get them ready for the next tier of models. And with external consultants, you can't really do that because then everything leaks and your whole strategy of hiding products until they are ready kind of breaks. So it might be the better way. But it's good that they are trying to train companies to accept external consultants to implement AI inside of their businesses, because that opens a lot of business opportunities for other agencies. And it could be actually quite good niche in terms of consultancy and agencies.
Okay, moving on, we've seen more people recently say they stop using Shopify for their new stores because it's much faster to just use something like Claude Code and develop the website, the full website, new landing pages, and so on. And even though we've seen Shopify start to release agents and like make it easier to integrate AI with Shopify and Shopify development, it seems that there might be a future where all or not all, but a lot of new e-commerce stores are going to just use Claude Code or Codex to build their stores instead of using Shopify. Have you seen this trend in practice? Have you used it like this? What do you think?
Yeah, I think from first-hand experience, it's definitely the direction to take, because building Shopify templates is quite difficult with Claude Code. The challenge is that most of the training data for these coding models weren't Liquid, which is the templating language for Shopify. So building anything inside of Shopify templates is very difficult to do with agentic coding because they just don't know their APIs because the training data didn't include it. So it makes it very slow to build Shopify templates with AI agents. On the other hand, you can spin out Next.js website even connected to Shopify APIs or third parties in matter of hours. And then it gives you a lot of flexibility, like new landing pages, integrations with third parties. It all is just a couple of prompts that can be done. And inside of Shopify, you still rely on that old school app store where you have to download apps that slow your theme down and it just make it difficult to connect all these dots. So it's definitely the direction because then you can build much better shopping experiences and you don't have to rely on app store inside of Shopify.
It sounds like Shopify might be in a rough spot right now because they have a dilemma, right? Like, do they continue with their own platform and kind of build the AI stuff on top, which from what you're saying, it doesn't seem like it's working and like a good solution, either now or in the long term? Or do they start something new completely from scratch and like break compatibility maybe with the old platform, like a Shopify 2.0 or 3.0, whichever version, main architecture? What do you think they're going to do ultimately? Because I'm sure they've seen this. I'm sure they've noticed this. And I guess they have to make a decision. Like, do they start from scratch and make it like all AI native? Or do they continue to build on?
A couple of years ago, they built Shopify Headless, which was essentially API version of Shopify where you can just connect your custom storefront. It wasn't super popular, and the biggest bottleneck used to be the speed of development because it just took so much time to build everything custom back in the day. But these days, with AI coding agents, you can actually spin out the front end super efficiently. So even though we might not be using Shopify templates in the future, there is still a possibility that we might be using the backend and their APIs to just process payments, process orders, and just handle like product management through their platform. But the storefronts are going to be separate. So that's the one option. But at the same time, that can get commoditized very quickly, and nothing holds Stripe back, for example, or other platforms from doing the same approach. And if Shopify loses the benefit of the app ecosystem, then they don't have much moat left, to be honest.
Yeah, that would be my next question. So let's say, they have this technology of, being more AI native. But the question then is, does it make sense to keep the Shopify overhead? Like, is there enough benefit in that? Like to pay, the Shopify monthly fees, the Shopify transaction fees, everything else that you might have to deal with? Or is it just better to start from scratch and, integrate with whatever you want anyway through MCP servers?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be some price pressure, right? Because why would you end up paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to Shopify for processing fees if you can cut it by 70% by having it straight connected to Stripe, for example? It used to be that the main benefit of Shopify is that you can set up your store in minutes and it's super easy. It looks decent out of the box, so you can start your business in an afternoon. But you can do that with Claude now. Like you don't need Shopify for that. So I'm pretty sure there will be a platform that's gonna be the successor of Shopify who figures this out. And they will just provide the tools that Shopify doesn't have in terms of APIs and connect it to Claude Code. You can vibe code your storefront in an afternoon and it takes all the benefits of Shopify away.
What do you think are the main elements that will be hard to give up from Shopify? So I think you mentioned like the catalog management. Like, is that something that, for now it's still like a lot easier to add new products by using, this Shopify backend instead of starting something from scratch where it might be a bit trickier, or I guess you'd have to develop your own, catalog management.
Or it might be an open source solution, right? That just lives. Or it could be like a third party platform that just allows you to manage your products. Or maybe we need to start thinking about it differently in terms of AI. Maybe you want to manage your products through Claude Cowork or other user interfaces, right? So maybe the backend itself is not going to be the way people manage their stores. It also used to be the hosting, right? Like if there's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you never have to worry about your site going down on Shopify because they can handle all the traffic. But again, you can push it over, and that's also not going to be your problem. So a lot of those benefits that they had over the years are kind of being eaten away. So there's not that much left, to be honest. I think they are up for some good disruption moving forward.
That's very interesting because Shopify has been dominating the e-commerce store world, right? The market. I think, more competition is better for everyone.
Yeah, always. They will have to innovate. So let's see if they manage to innovate themselves out of it.
So speaking of Stripe, they launched this new, feature, this new project that's called Stripe Projects. Have you looked into it? What exactly is it used for? How would you use it?
So we talk about the custom development of front ends, right? So you need to connect a couple of services together to make a full functioning web app. It can be a database, it can be front end hosting, it can be file storage and million other things. These days, vector databases and so on, connection to LLMs. So there's so many moving parts that you need to manage, and it's kind of painful to do it manually. So what Stripe project does, it gives you CLI interface. So from your command line, you can actually create new Vercel account without having to sign up. You can create new Supabase account without having to go through the user interface. So if you're a human using it, you can, through 5 different commands, set up your whole infrastructure, and the billing is centralized inside of Stripe, which means you don't have to worry about billing in 5 different platforms. It's all under one hood, and you have great visibility. But what they are betting on is that this can be used by AI agents. So instead of you giving it the direction to set up new database, your AI agent can either decide, or you give it the direction to spin out a new database for a specific use case, and it does it on its own, and it doesn't need to go through user interfaces, and it just speeds up and simplifies the development.
So one of my favorite things ever since AI agents took off and became useful and practical has been exactly like what you mentioned, being able to control other accounts from other platforms, other apps, other tools from a main AI chat interface. Like I found this so much easier. For one, because, I can just chat with it and I can give it commands from the chat, just like I talked with you. But on the other side, I don't have to learn that new tool, basically, right? Like I don't have to learn the interface. I don't have to learn the settings. I don't have to spend like hours trying to figure out, what's the best way to set it up. So I can just talk to my AI agent and it will figure out for me based on my goals for that app, right? So this is amazing. And I guess one missing piece here is that even though you could create new accounts with other AI agents, you couldn't really pay for them, right? So this makes it a lot easier. Is that the main value proposition here?
Yeah, I think the payment centralization is definitely a big benefit of the tool, and the whole setup process. Because like going through onboarding and setup of different accounts, it just takes a lot of time, and then it's hard to do it with an agent. But now you just do it with one simple command, and you centralize your billing, so you know exactly what you are paying for. Because if you start building custom solutions these days, you have so many accounts and so many billing from different it's kind of hard to keep track. You really need to create like your own database to check your billing, what you're actually paying for. Otherwise you forget about services. So being in a single place, that should be very helpful. And maybe you are going to have the benefit of like vendor hopping, right? That now you're using database A, but there's a new database that's 50% off at your tier, and it does the same thing, and the agent can easily migrate to it. So you can like self-optimize for cost. So that could be a good benefit as well.
Yeah, this seems like a very exciting future, and it's only going to get a lot better. And I'm very glad to see a lot more major platforms and apps have started to launch their own MCP servers, CLI tools, which makes it a lot easier to interact with all of these platforms through the AI agents. And, it's only the beginning. So I guess everyone will have to do it, in the not too distant future.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those features that everybody needs to have. Because like living without an MCP server moving forward is gonna be impossible. It's gonna be
Well,
a
I'm
necessity.
looking forward to that future, and until then, we'll talk about new topics and whatnot from next week.
Great. We'll see you in the next one.